Welcome back, or welcome to Crimeland. As you know, these days the documentary about Gabby Petito has been released on Netflix, a heartbreaking case that kept the whole world on edge. Gabby Petito was a very beautiful, charismatic, and sweet 22-year-old girl who loved to travel. A passion she shared with her boyfriend Brian Laundrie, who is 23 and with whom she has been together since 2019, so for about 2 years, and became officially engaged in July 2020. In July 2020, Brian asked her to marry him, and the two made a decision. They wanted to open their YouTube channel, a travel channel. They wanted to buy a van, and they wanted to live in it, constantly traveling, recording videos of their trips and posting them on YouTube. You have undoubtedly seen many other channels like this on YouTube that discuss van life. So, they wanted to try to do it too and make it their job. And they do. They gather their courage, leave their jobs, buy a van, a 2012 Ford Transit, put a mattress inside to make a bed, decorate it nicely with fairy lights and their photos hanging on the walls, and in July 2021, they set off. They travel through Colorado and Utah, documenting everything on Instagram with photos and stories. But after Gabby's last photo posted on August 1st, neither she nor Brian posts anything for 12 days until they publish a photo on August 13th. But this long absence raises suspicions, and indeed, something had happened during those days. A man in Utah reports to the police that he saw a young couple arguing and saw the boy slap his girlfriend. This couple was presumably Gabby and Brian. As they head to the area in question, the Moab police officers in Utah encounter Gabby and Brian's speeding van and stop it. They find Gabby crying uncontrollably and blaming herself for everything, blaming herself for all the attacks, blaming herself for distracting Brian while driving, and for having argued with him since the morning, while Brian, interrogated separately by other officers, appears completely calm, joking with the officers, but says he reacted to Gabby's physical aggression, and Gabby also confirms that she was the first to be physically violent with Brian. It's important to know that at this point, Gabby shows red marks on her face, which, after several inquiries by the police officer, she admits were caused by Brian, who had grabbed her face during the argument and scratched her in doing so. This entire conversation was recorded by the police officer's body cams.
Can I get you to step out of the vehicle for me, ma'am?
Yeah, I don't know. It's just, some days I have really bad OCD, and I was just cleaning and straightening up the back of the van before, and I was apologizing to him and saying...
Did he hit you, though? I mean, it's okay if you're saying you hit him, and then I understand if he hit you, but we want to know the truth if he actually hit you.
I guess, yeah, but I can reverse.
Where did he hit you? Don't worry, just be honest.
He, grabbed my face, I guess. He didn't, hit me in the face, he didn't, punch me in the face or anything.
Did he slap your face, or what?
Well, he, grabbed me, with his nail, and I guess that's why it looks... I definitely have a cut right here, because I can feel it.
Yeah.
Touch it at first.
The Moab police, at this point, decides to have the two fiancés spend the night separated. They decide that Gabby was the main aggressor in the argument and would spend the night alone in her van, while Brian, who was the victim, was paid for a night in a hotel. So, the reason they had not posted photos or stories on Instagram during those 12 days was indeed the tension and ongoing fights between them. But after this incident, they returned to posting normally, even publishing their first vlog on YouTube, and things between them seemed to have returned to normal. On August 17th, Brian returns to Florida without Gabby to take care of a storage unit he had rented, and on the 23rd returns to Wyoming to Gabby. But during this time, the photos and especially the captions Gabby posts on Instagram seem different from usual. A few days later, Gabby talks to her parents and confides in her mother Nicole about the period of tension she is experiencing with Brian. But Gabby never tells her about the awful fight she had with Brian. Unfortunately, her parents, like everyone else in the world, will discover about that fight and the conversations with the Moab police a long time after her disappearance. After a few messages that puzzled Gabby's mom, the couple is seen arguing again in public, and from that day, August 27th, no one hears from the girl again, and nothing is posted on Instagram by either of them. At first, Gabby's parents try to convince themselves that the reason was that the kids had no signal because there often was no service in the remote places they were visiting. But then they start to worry. They call both Gabby and Brian continuously, but receive no answer. Repeatedly call Brian's parents, but there is no response from them either. And after several days of trying to contact them, on September 11th, they report the couple missing. However, in doing so, they discover that Brian was not missing at all. He had returned to his parents' home in Florida, having brought the van back to his parents' house on September 1st. Not only that, but Brian's parents had already obtained a lawyer to invoke their right to remain silent, and this is precisely why they did not respond to the numerous phone calls from the Petitos. In other words, Brian had returned home 10 days earlier without Gabby, and his parents knew about it, yet they never said anything. Meanwhile, the investigation to find Gabby begins, and as the search continues, a report is also made about Brian's disappearance on September 17th, because, according to his parents, the boy went out for a hike and never returned. So, at this point, both Gabby and Brian are missing. Of course, the media and public opinion begin to develop various theories, all of which practically see Brian as responsible for Gabby's disappearance. The picture was quite clear in the eyes of the public. Brian had taken Gabby's life and was now on the run. At one point, a couple of YouTubers, who also ran a travel and van life channel, realized they had seen Gabby and Brian's van because it was in all the newspapers. In fact, these two YouTubers accidentally realized that on August 27th, they had filmed it in one of their videos and decided to involve the police, especially since, theoretically, Gabby was already missing on August 27th. The FBI then went to the area where these two YouTubers had seen Gabby's van parked, and not far from there, on September 19th, 2021, the FBI discovered the lifeless body of Gabby Petito, who had died by strangulation around August 27th. This is the date of her death according to the coroner, and August 27th was also the day she had been seen publicly arguing again, the same day the YouTubers unintentionally filmed the van pulled over by the side of the road. However, despite all these circumstances, Brian could not be arrested. They could not issue a murder warrant due to insufficient evidence against him. Nevertheless, even if he could not be arrested for murder, he could be arrested for fraud because, after his girlfriend's death, he used her credit card to make personal purchases without her permission. Brian was nowhere to be found. He had disappeared, so at this point, a warrant for his arrest was issued, making him officially the most wanted man in America. On October 20th, Brian's parents were involved in the search. Throughout this time, they had never spoken a word. The FBI went with them to the Carlton Reserve in Sarasota County because they had reason to believe that Brian was hiding there. Incredibly, after just 30 minutes of searching, his parents found him, or rather, they found his remains. Law enforcement had searched for Brian tirelessly for months without success, yet his parents had found him within just 30 minutes. It was as if they already knew where to go. However, Brian was lifeless, and beside his decomposed remains, his backpack and a diary were also found. The FBI confirmed that Brian Laundrie was dead, and that the remains found in the woods were his. Only some bones had been discovered in a densely wooded area of the Carlton Reserve, which is very humid and swampy. According to the coroner's report, the remains had been underwater for an extended period before being found, which obviously compromised their condition, along with animal activity, coyote scavenging, and so on. For this reason, it was feared that an accurate analysis would not be possible. Brian could have died simply because hiding alone for weeks in a swamp is not easy. He might have died from a fall, an injury, starvation, thirst, or an animal attack. A preliminary autopsy was conducted but did not yield conclusive results. The case was then handed to a forensic anthropologist who, in November 2021, determined the cause of Brian's death. But that information was not revealed until February 2022. Brian Laundrie died from a self-inflicted gunshot wound to the head. Brian took his own life. Along with the remains, some of his personal effects were found, including some of his clothes, a waterproof bag containing photographs, the diary, and the gun he used to take his life. At this point, however, the content of the diary was missing. We were all on edge as we awaited the experts to analyze the diary's content and reveal whether it was legible. It was revealed that not only was the content legible, but that inside the diary, Brian Laundrie confessed to having taken his girlfriend Gabby Petito's life. At that point, this was all we knew, and we were all on the verge of coming to terms with it when the exact content of the diary's pages was revealed. And let's say that the confession everyone hoped for, which Gabby's family hoped for, was not exactly what they expected. I will read all the pages that have been made public and comment on them with you. So, Brian writes, "Gabby, I wish I could be by your side. I wish I could talk to you right now. I would relive all the memories we have made. I would be even more excited about the future. I can't live without you. I've lost every day we could have spent together, every vacation. I will never be able to hike with," and here it is unclear what he wrote. "I can't go hiking with TJ, Gabby's brother, anymore. I loved you more than anything else. I can't bear to look at our photos, to remember the best moments, and that's why I can't move on. When I close my eyes, I will think of when I lay on the roof of the van, falling asleep to the sight of a meteor shower at Crystal Geyser. I will always love you." So far, Brian is addressing Gabby as if he were writing her a letter, expressing how much he loved her and listing all the things he will never be able to do because of her death. And he talks about how he cannot continue living, because remembering their moments together and looking at their old photos is just too strong. However, from here on, Brian stops speaking to Gabby and starts speaking to us. He is addressing anyone reading that letter, being aware that many people would read those pages because remember that when Brian took his life, the case was already a massive media story. So, addressing us, Brian writes, "If you read Gabby's diary, if you look at the photos of our life together, if you flip through the old postcards, wouldn't you want to live a day without her, knowing that every day you will wake up without her? Wouldn't you want to wake up? I'm sorry for everyone who will be affected by this news. Gabby was the love of my life, but I know she was adored by many. I'm very sorry for her family because I love them. I consider her younger siblings my best friends. I'm sorry for my family. This is a shock for them, as well as a terrible pain. They loved her as much, if not more than I did. She was like a new daughter to my mother, an aunt to my nieces and nephews. Please do not make their life harder." At this point, I cannot help but say that if she truly was like a second daughter to his mother, his parents should have at least reported her missing. From here on, pay attention because Brian Laundrie confesses. He confesses to having taken Gabby's life. So he writes, "At that moment, I didn't realize I should have started the fire first. But I wanted to bring her away from the cold to the car, from where I started the fire. I had no idea how far the car could be. I just knew it was on the other side of the creek. When I pulled Gabby out of the water, she couldn't tell me what hurt. She had a small bump on her forehead that had eventually swelled. Her feet hurt, her wrist hurt, but she was frozen, shaking violently. As I carried her in my arms, she kept making sounds of pain. While I lay next to her, she spoke little, between violent shakes, gasps of pain begging for the end of her life. She would fall asleep, and I would shake her, fearing she might close her eyes if she had a concussion. She would wake up in pain, and the whole painful cycle would start over. Furious that I was the one waking her up, she wouldn't let me try to cross the creek. She thought the fire would go out while she slept and she would freeze. I don't know the extent of Gabby's injuries. I only know that she was suffering tremendously. I ended her life. I thought it was a merciful act, that it was what she wanted. But now I see all the mistakes I made. I panicked. I was in shock. But from the moment I decided to end her pain, I understood I couldn't go on without her. Okay, friends, hold on. So what is Brian's confession? He essentially says that as they were returning to their van before it got dark, Gabby tripped and fell into the water of a stream at Spread Creek and hurt herself so badly that she asked Brian to end her pain, asking her boyfriend to kill her. And so he did. He writes that he took Gabby's life as a merciful act, thinking that it was what she wanted. A 22-year-old girl wanting to be strangled by her boyfriend because of a hit to the head. But Brian writes as if they were in the middle of nowhere, as if he couldn't call for help, as if that was the only solution. Presumably he had no signal on his phone or had no battery. Presumably the van was too far away. That is, he writes that he wanted to try to cross the creek to see where the van was, but Gabby wouldn't allow him to because she didn't want to be left alone. And let me ask you, rather than doing that minor wrong of leaving her alone in the dark, what do? You kill her? I mean, is it a greater wrong to strangle her with your hands? Even assuming she had a severe head injury, how do you come to the conclusion that strangling her is the answer? To end her pain, what is she, a dog? But even if she were a dog, that would still make you a monster. When a pet gets hurt, you take it to the vet. In any case, a journalist, Brian Anten, retraced the route that Gabby and Brian had taken, as well as the path from where Brian killed Gabby to the van. Friends, the distance was 5 to 10 minutes on foot. The journalist explained that this was not such a vast area. They could not have gone that far. Moreover, Brian Laundrie was a survival expert. He was used to being in nature, in the wilderness. It's absurd to think he wouldn't know that his van was just a 5-minute walk away. After taking Gabby's life, Brian Laundrie took Gabby's phone and, pretending to be her, started sending a series of texts in the days that followed to make everyone believe that the girl was still alive. He sent a message from her phone to her mother, Nicole, to make her believe that Gabby was still alive. Then he drove the van back to his parents' home, who had contacted a lawyer, and the rest we all know. Anyway, let's conclude the letter. Brian continues writing, I wanted to drive north and let James and TJ kill me, referring to Gabby's stepfather, James, her mother's husband, with whom she was extremely close, and TJ, as I mentioned earlier, was Gabby's brother. So, do you see? Even then, he portrays himself as a selfless and merciful person. He'd like to be killed by them, but doesn't do it because he doesn't want them to go to jail because of him. So, he would rather even be eaten by wild animals. Gabby's parents, in March 2022, filed a lawsuit against Brian's parents, Christopher and Roberta Laundrie, seeking more than $100,000 in damages for the emotional distress they suffered due to them. The lawsuit also claims that Christopher and Roberta Laundrie helped Brian hide Gabby's murder and were planning their son's escape from the country. Moreover, the lawsuit states that instead of aiding Gabby's parents in finding their daughter, the Laundries went on vacation with Brian, ignored the Petitos' pleas for help. Additionally, as noted in the lawsuit, Roberta Laundrie blocked Nicole's phone number and Facebook profile back in September to avoid contact, while Nicole was calling her looking for answers about what had happened to her daughter. Gabby's parents also filed a motion to add Brian's family's lawyer, Stephen Bertolino, as a defendant in the lawsuit. This is because, according to them, Bertolino, besides Brian's parents, knew that Gabby had been killed and was aware of the location of her body. There is also a letter that was reportedly given to Brian by his mother Roberta, and on the envelope it was written, "Burn after reading." There were many rumors about what was inside this letter. Many thought it was a proposal of help for Brian from Roberta, perhaps instructions on how to leave the country. There were rumors that this letter mentioned a shovel to help Brian bury Gabby's body, or even that Roberta wrote that if Brian ended up in prison, She would bring him a cake hidden inside with a saw to help him escape. However, in a deposition from March 2023, Roberta Laundrie finally clarified this letter. In her deposition, she asserted that the letter was written and given to her son Brian before he left for the trip with Gabby and had nothing to do with what happened. The phrase "burn after reading" is a quote from a book Brian had read and does not mean anything more. According to her, the letter contained things that were meant to show Brian how much she loved him. She wanted him to know that before he left for that long trip. She claims that the phrases that were circulated, presumably those about the saw and the shovel, were totally taken out of context and misinterpreted by the public. In any case, Gabby's family won the civil lawsuit against Brian's family, and the judge determined that the Petitos were entitled to $3 million in damages. Neither Brian nor his family has $3 million, and it was said that the amount was actually a symbolic figure. So I suppose the two families came to an agreement, negotiated a sum between them, and the money will still go to Gabby Petito's foundation that her parents had established in her honor at the time of her disappearance. The last update is perhaps the most painful of all because not long ago, Gabby's parents decided to release a photo, a selfie of Gabby found on her cell phone. This photo, my friends, is incredibly hard to look at, so as always, I warn you as it might disturb some of you. This is the photo Gabby took after the argument with Brian in Utah, the one for which the Moab police had stopped them, and whose videos were later released. In the videos, we could see Gabby crying in a way that literally breaks the heart, and when the officer asked her what the red mark on her face was, she quickly defended Brian, not wanting to say that it was him. But she eventually admitted it after persistent questioning, stating that she had hit him first. As mentioned, it all ended with the police labeling Gabby as the main aggressor and Brian as the victim. Well, Gabby's parents have shared this photo. These were the injuries to Gabby's face when the Moab police labeled her as the main aggressor and forced her to sleep in the van alone while they paid for Brian's hotel as the victim. There is no doubt that the relationship between Gabby and Brian was toxic, and it's also clear that both parties contribute to a toxic relationship. However, it is important to note that there is always a victim and a perpetrator. Watching the videos of Brian and Gabby speaking with the Moab police that day, seeing her unable to stop crying even for a second while Brian laughs with the officers as if nothing had happened, combined with the evident marks on Gabby's face that we can now see clearly, makes me question how it was possible to conclude that she was the aggressor. Some experts believe that the injuries Gabby shows in this photo indicate that Brian may have even attempted to strangle her at that time, putting his hands on her face and trying to block her airways. Hence, it could have been more than just a warning sign. It was possibly an attempt at murder, a prelude to something that was later carried through weeks afterward. This is why Gabby's parents decided to sue the Moab police as well, stating that the officers who stopped Gabby and Brian just weeks before her death could have saved her life. And for that reason, they are seeking $50 million in damages. Serious allegations have also emerged against one of the police officers who spoke with Gabby that day, Officer Eric Pratt of the Moab Police Department, who allegedly threatened to kill an ex-girlfriend after their relationship ended in 2017. These accusations come from a woman whose name has not been disclosed, but according to the Petitos' lawyers, it would demonstrate that the officer was biased against Gabby, or simply not the right person to handle that kind of situation. The city of Moab stated in response that, while Gabby Petito's death was a major tragedy, the Moab Police Department is not responsible for it, adding that the city will vigorously defend against this legal action. To date, these are the latest updates. Gabby's family remains active and continues to raise awareness through the foundation they opened in Gabby's honor, the Gabby Petito Foundation, whose mission is to provide support to those in need, both to families who have lost a loved one and to individuals who are victims of domestic violence, in order to prevent further tragedies from happening. Let me know what you think about this case and the overall situation. As always, let me know in the comments, and I'll see you in the next video.